Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. It's that time of week again where my business partner, Sam Rust, takes over the show and interviews our guests. I hope you enjoy the show.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Sam Rust. With me today is Martin Saenz with the Bequest Fund. Martin is the managing partner of Bequest Funds, which is a $50 million 506c Reg D income fund. Martin has written 4 books on the mortgage industry and speaks at conferences around the country and holds an MBA from Drexel University and an MS in project management from George Washington University. Martin, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me on, Sam.
Well, I'm excited to dive into a little bit of about real estate notes, which I understand is a specialty of yours. Maybe we could start by sketching out what real estate notes are, some of the specific niches that you guys cover. And then I'd love to quiz you a little bit on some of your backstory, how you got into here as well.
Sure, absolutely. So the best way to kind of look at real estate notes from the perspective of our business model is if you take a lending institution or some type of bank originator and you have a borrower, and they're looking to purchase a home. And so they go into this bank or lending institution and they apply for a mortgage loan. And through the process of underwriting and approvals, the outcome is going to be that they are going to go to the closing table and they're going to sign a promissory note, which is a promise to, borrow X amount of money, and they're going to pay it back given a certain set of terms. And they're also going to sign a security instrument / deed of trust or a mortgage document that's going to tie that promise to the property in case of default. And so over the course of time, the lending institution is going to collect or build a portfolio of these performing mortgage loans, and a portion of those loans are going to go into default. So the borrower will stop paying for some reason. Typically, it's based on love. They go. There's a divorce, unemployment. They lose their job, or health. Something happens in their health, with their health. And so through that defaulted status, the lending institution is going to bundle a number of these defaulted mortgage loans, and they're going to sell them off into the secondary market. So the secondary mortgage market is essentially like a flea market whereby you have hedge funds and other banks that are buying and selling these defaulted mortgage loans. And so this is where my background lies, in that secondary mortgage market space where I have one side of the business that purchases these non-performing mortgage loans and another side that purchases what we call reperforming mortgage loans, or you can just say performing mortgages.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So you guys focus on the performing or reperforming notes. You're not in the non-performing space, at least as of this juncture.
Actually, we're a large buyer of non-performing mortgage loans throughout the United States. So just to kind of give you an example, my company has purchased about $25 million worth of non-performing mortgage loans in the past 18 months. So we are a very active buyer in the non-performing mortgage space. However, for the purposes of Bequest Funds, which is what I'm representing today, it's an income fund that only houses a portfolio of performing mortgage loans.
Gotcha. What are some of the unique risks on a performing note? What do you see as some of the things that you caution investors about, or things that'd be good for people to know as they're investing in these funds?
So, the first thing I would say is that the underwriting guidelines need to be the same for performing mortgages as they are for non-performing mortgages. So you are taking the worst case scenario into play here. So you're saying, what if the borrower stops making payments on a performing mortgage loan? So if you vet that mortgage loan like a non-performing mortgage loan, then you're going to be prepared for whatever needs you need to be prepared for. So that's kind of step one, having your underwriting guidelines in place and your team has good systems, and you have all the resources like credit pooling, skip tracing, title report pooling, and so forth. So that's kind of like square one. The other component that often gets overlooked with performing mortgages is the monitoring process. So you still need a team of asset managers that are going to monitor the performance of these mortgage loans, and really cultivate relationships with the borrowers, so that if there is a delay in payment, the asset manager can get on the phone with the homeowner and find out what's going on and how they're able to assist that homeowner, keep on track with their mortgage obligation.
That makes a lot of sense. We've spent some time here, Martin, talking about what is a note, the whole industry. But we're on the real estate syndication show, where we've spent a lot of time talking about raising capital. You've got Bequest Fund, which, as I understand it, is an 8% annual, more of a yield fund. How do you go about attracting investors to that sort of an instrument? What are some of your best strategies for attracting new investors?
So, to be boring, I'd have to say, someone paid us the ultimate compliment last week when I was speaking to them, and it was a capital raise pitch that I was making. And he told me flat out, he goes, "You're boring, and I'm looking for boring." And I'm like, praise the Lord. Like, that is the best way. I've never thought of summing up my fund that way, but that's what we want to be. We're a place where people want to use us to create additional streams of income, and not have to worry about the ups and downs, the volatility of that investment, and just knowing that if they place $100,000, they're going to get $667 of monthly income paid to them for the rest of their life, because it's set up as an evergreen fund. Or they can let it compound. So, but that's exactly what we want to be known as just a tool for building additional streams of income in one's life.
Yeah. I've been doing some research myself into funds. There's so many different varieties. I mean, it really is design your own. But there's closed funds, which accept funds for a certain period of time, and they have a sunset on them. And then you referenced that your fund is an evergreen fund. Why did you pick an evergreen fund? And what are some of the unique advantages that you see by picking that direction?
Sure. So I have to kind of take it from my non-performing business arm. And that is, so we have a team of asset managers, and we have an entity whereby we purchase non-performing mortgage loans, and we work with the homeowners to keep them in their homes with payments they can afford while making a profit for our company. So our what we consider a social good is to contact a homeowner who hasn't made their payment in a few years, find out how to be compassionate with that individual, find out what they can afford, and match it with our return expectations, so that we can grow our business. Now, from that point, once we have that loan that's performing, what we would normally do, we might sell that off in the secondary market, recapitalize, and kind of go after larger purchases. But what me and my partner realized is that we needed more of a legacy play. We needed something that, we can hand down to our children at some point. So we said, we have these cash flowing assets that are 20, 30 years in duration. And it's going to outlive us as we're buying more and more of these, on a monthly basis, and creating more and more with our asset management team. And so, hence the name Bequest Funds, which is, synonymous with legacy. And that's why we set it up as an evergreen fund. We put in $1 million just to kick it off. And that's really what we wanted to send a message to say, we're here for the long term. We're not one of these, one of the funds, and I'm not knocking anyone, but we're not like a lot of funds in the mortgage note space that are going to, term out at 3 years and then liquidate and cash everyone out. We want something that's going to be there for decades. And we want to, just make it a legacy play.
Yeah. So diving into a little bit of the details there, Martin. Some investors want to place money forever. Their idea of a best investment is something that's boring and something that gives them a very predictable return for a long time horizon. Some people, maybe a little bit on the younger side, are looking to grow faster. Maybe they're looking for a place to park some money for a time, but they want to have access to it. How do you guys give access to investors if they don't want to be in the fund for the full duration?
Sure, absolutely. So we're set up with an 8% annual return in only a 12-month lock-in period. So there's only a 12-month commitment period to earn the 8%. Now we also have in 9% pref that we pay. It's a different class shareholder status, but it has a 4-year lock-in period. So we have a few different options, but our staple is the 8%. It's only a 12-month lock-in period. But if one is on the younger side or someone's entrepreneurial at whatever age bracket they're in, they should just consider this as a diversified play. So in other words, they can park some money in, let it generate cash flow for them as they go about and learn a new skill set or invest money in a riskier opportunity.
Sure. Now, in our business on the multifamily side, we're pretty tied to market cycles. And it's maybe a little bit more obvious. When the market's going good, maybe you have a harder time finding deals, maybe capital's a little bit easier, and you have to maintain your underwriting standards. And then when the bottom falls out, deals are easier to find, but maybe capital isn't quite as readily available. How does the economic cycle work in the notes business? And how do you handle economic downturns and start preparing for them now?
So I'll answer that two ways because it depends on whether we're talking about the non-performing side or the performing mortgage side. So from the perspective of the performing mortgage side, our portfolio sits collectively at a 61% investment to value ratio. That's extremely significant because that's really the foundation for our whole fund. So I'll give you an example. I'll put it as an example. So if you have a home that's valued at $100,000, Bequest funds will have a full investment not to exceed $61,000 in that opportunity. So that gives a $39,000 cushion in the event of a market downturn. Now, why we're able to do that, how we're able to do that while paying an 8% return is because these mortgages are re-performing mortgages. So if you take the example of the bank selling off a non-performing mortgage loan to a hedge fund for, let's say, 30 cents on the dollar, and that hedge fund gets in contact with the homeowner and works out a payment plan to get them back on their feet. And now what they'll do is they'll sell that asset that they paid 30 cents on the dollar for to Bequest funds at 70 cents on the dollar. So the coupon may be 7-8%. However, we're buying those assets into Bequest at a 12 to 14% yield. So that cushion between, which is essentially the third, right? So if we buy it in at 12% yield and we're paying out 8, we have a third that operates as our cushion. And that's how we operate the fund. There's no fees associated to the 8%. It's a very clean, smooth transaction. And we use our excess funds, the buffer between 8% and 12%, to operate the fund and to purchase more loans, to create more of a security for the investor.
Actually, so rather than distributing that in your example, the extra 4%, you're reinvesting that essentially back into the fund and further growing the investor's money. Is that the right way to look at it?
Yes, because at this point, there's no leverage in the fund. Now the PPMs calls out that we can have leverage, but right now we're just match investing. So we're going after a trade for 2 million. We're going to raise 2 million. That's kind of the philosophy. We don't have any leverage or cost of capital, at work. So we're able to operate the fund at that 4-point spread. And to date, just so you know, we haven't pulled out any money out of the fund, but that's going to change. At some point we might, but yeah, right now we're just creating cushion for our investors.
And so you outlined a lot of facts and figures there on, different spreads, 30 cents on the dollar, then flipping it to a performing note and selling it at 70 cents on the dollar. How does that change, in a bad economic time? Right now we're in kind of a weird spot where certain sectors of the economy are running really hot. There's a lot of investor confidence. There's a lot of consumer confidence, but we also are coming out of the weirdest 12 months any of us have seen. What, from a macroeconomic level, how does a downturn affect your pricing levels and potentially your profit margins on new business, not necessarily just the stuff in your fund?
Sure. So what I'll say first is if you look at like the '08 crisis and whereby banks were originating ninja loans and doing all types of chaotic arms and whatnot, underwriting loans they had no business underwriting, and which caught borrowers in a really bad spot, once everything started to unravel. So a lot of those loans, a lot of the banks kind of learned those lessons. But with that said, we are going to have an economic downturn. There was about a 20% depreciation in fair market value during the '08 crisis. And so given that we have a 61% investment to value, which gives us a 39% cushion on our assets, we feel that we are protecting our investors with that. But I'm going to say one thing. What's more significant than that? What's more significant is this is a portfolio of mainly, I believe all the assets in there currently are owner occupied properties. There might be one or two that's not, but I'm pretty sure that we've kind of held true to that. And so there's emotional equity. These are homes where the homeowners have raised their children, kids go to school, kids play with the neighbors. And so there's emotional equity. And then couple that with a well-trained asset management team that works very closely with the homeowner. What that equates to is that we're first in mind every month when a borrower has to cut checks for payments. So we feel like if we keep those two, capital preservation, and we keep collectability percentages where they need to be, which it's 96% for the fund as I'm talking to you now, collectability, we feel we're going to be pretty secure. Now, market downturn, right now there's a shortage of inventory in our space because cost of capital is so low and a number of other factors. But when there's an economic downturn, both on the non-performing and performing note side, we'll see an increase in inventory. So actually asset prices will decrease as a result of a market downturn. So there's actually going to be more purchasing involved when the market downturn occurs. However, with that said, keep in mind that equity coverage of these assets will also decrease, right? So you're paying more now, but you're getting more value.
Yeah, they're moving in parallel to each other, essentially. So you have a very interesting, almost completely vertically integrated system where you're taking in non-performing notes at the top end, you're getting them performing, you're working with the people, and then moving those performing notes or reperforming notes into the Bequest fund. I would imagine that
actually very seldom we set it up. We set it up to do that. Exactly what you're saying is to make it a funnel into Bequest. But what we've been doing for the most part, by and large, is purchasing the performing mortgages in the secondary market third party and using our non-performing fund to just accrue a collection of notes in reserve. Okay. If we ever had to move them over into Bequest. So what we intentionally thought to do it that way, but we actually have found that we're buying enough from the secondary space.
Okay. So I guess a question either way, whether you're funneling them from your own organization or you're going out into the secondary market, I would assume that you're buying at some level of scale. What level of underwriting can you do on even just the markets that you're purchasing in? Do you have the ability to say, hey, we don't want to buy non-performing notes in North Dakota or in certain counties? Or do you just have to buy an entire bundle and sift through it, and that's part of the squeeze necessary to achieve the juice?
Yeah, so we'll buy we'll buy all or nothing pools. And once you move away from the retail setting, you really got to take down the entire pool for the most part, especially on the performing mortgage side. So we have a thorough underwriting process where we look at property valuation, we'll look at credit reporting, we'll look at lien validity, we'll look at skip tracing. And so we can actually determine with confidence, how much equity coverage we have and who the borrower is in their ability to pay us on time or continue to pay us on time. We can make that determination regardless of what state their home resides in. It's really about the borrower and their ability to pay. So we're not as territory specific with purchasing.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Kind of zooming out a little bit, Martin, in what way have you recently improved your business that we might be able to learn from?
Implemented sales training in our company. So we do a tremendous amount of motivation and team cohesion practices in our company. We have an 8:05 meeting that we've been doing since when I had my prior company it was a government contracting company. We would meet at 8:05 when everyone gets in, and we all have metrics that we're responsible for, and we all relay our metrics and celebrate our wins within a 10-minute time period. And we keep our metrics up on a board where it's being updated all throughout the day. So we're very metrics driven. We're very goal oriented as a company. However, I've been as of this year implementing sales training to everyone in the organization, as we're all sales individuals at the end of the day. So I'm trying to improve sales from our asset management perspective, from our investor relations, from our controller who has to talk to people in operations, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart idea. I've been a part of a couple different sales organizations, and the best ones bring that sales training, whether it's in-house or out of house, to the entire team, because ultimately everybody's serving somebody, whether it's people in your own organization or customer facing. We can all stand to improve in those areas.
Oh yeah. I mean, I benefit the most, right? Like the person who brings the training to the team. I mean, I'm learning as this is all unfolding. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for picking the right metrics to track? I mean, you've got a fairly large organization with a lot of different roles. I think in a strict sales sense, it's easy to come up with those KPIs. It can be harder for some of those softer roles, whether it's in, accounting or different silos like that. How do you go about picking the correct metrics?
Yeah, so I'll give you a few. I mean, we want to look at from an investor relationships perspective. We have a funnel, just like most capital raise teams. So we want to see, how many people are in the pipeline, how many people are signed up to attend a webinar that we host monthly, how many of these people have soft committed, how many of these people have soft committed and received our PPM and sent in their accreditation letter. And so we'll have a process there. Asset managers, we look at the percentage of their portfolio whereby they have resolutions out. So resolutions are payoff requests, loan modification options, things like that. Things that will resolve the default status with the homeowner. We'll have, from a performing mortgage standpoint, we're looking daily at our collectability percentages, the buckets whereby we do have some lateness. What are the buckets for 0 to 15 days, 16 days to 30, and so on. So, those are a few metrics that we look at.
Yeah, that's excellent.
We're on it though. I mean, if I can tell you anything, if I can say anything with confidence, it's that we are all over our operation. It's critically important. This is my livelihood. This is my, the team's livelihood, and that's where that's at.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any resources that you'd recommend for folks that are wanting to implement similar structure into their own businesses? Anything that you've looked to for guidance?
Yeah, I think there's a good book if we're talking about capital raising. Matthew Burke, Capital Attraction. Hunter Thompson has written an awesome book, and I'm attending his webinar in a few weeks. I'm just always out there. I like Grant Cardone. I know he turns half the population off, but I like his grit. I like how he's just he's very wealthy, but he's just code red on everything still, as if he's broke. Robert Kiyosaki. I mean, I credit him for Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, to get me even started in real estate, because I'm also a landlord as well, and so I kind of get that side of the business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, Martin, as we get ready to close up here, 2 last questions. What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
So finding a relationship with God in 2013. Prior to that, I was all just about earning money. It was about dollars and cents and, what I could acquire. And once I placed spirituality in my life, I changed my entire focus to serving others. So since for the past 8 years, it's all been about service to others. And that's transformed my whole state of being. The other thing I'll say is that if for those that are investing or starting up new businesses, focus on control, assets when you're buying them, what can you control and what will cash flow? Because that's so significant. This whole world, buys cryptocurrency and all these things I don't understand, but there's so much purchasing and activity off of appreciation. And appreciation doesn't buy groceries. So focus on the cash flow and control.
Yep. I appreciate that. And finally, Martin,
I didn't insult anything you do. I don't really know too much about your line, so I apologize.
No, that's I completely agree with you. Certainly appreciation is a larger part of the multifamily space, but part of a core principle here at LifeBridge Capital is we want to get into assets that are good cash flow. Because it eliminates a lot of the downside risk. Development is kind of the polar opposite. The risk reward profile is kind of staggering. You can make a lot of money very, very quickly. You can also lose a lot of money very, very quickly. So
you're sexy. I'm boring and you're sexy.
Finally, Martin, how do you like to give back?
Oh gosh. There's causes I give to financially, that are kind of private to me. I think special needs is a huge area. Give a lot to missions. That's important to me. Spreading spirituality, spreading the message of God, I think is important. Regardless of what religion or belief system you have. I mean, there's a need for us to kind of get connected to something deeper than a lot of the noise that's being perpetuated out in the space. And so I'll kind of just leave it at that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Before we close out, anywhere that you'd like to direct folks to if they have more questions or want to get in touch with you guys?
Yeah. You can go to bqfunds.com or email me at martin@bqfunds.com and I'll send you a free ebook.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate you taking the time, Martin. Great to have you on the show. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Sam. You too.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.